Bungleboori Creek is one of the great creeks of the northern Blue Mountains, flowing from its headwaters on the Nunes Plateau and winding tens of kilometres through the Wollongambie wilderness before finally reaching the Colo River. The creek flows through rugged and wild country, far, far away from any signs of civilization. Any attempt to access the creek requires extensive bushwalking experience, navigational ability, and confidence in pathfinding and off-track walking. For the few that are competent and willing to access the Bungleboori, pristine natural beauty and an almost endless amount of opportunities for canyoning and exploration await. Join me as I spend 3 days in the remote Bungleboori wilderness. Our journey begins today with us leaving civilization behind at the Zigzag Railway near Lithgow, before driving along a series of dirt roads that get increasingly dangerous for our poor two-wheel drive.
We're off on another Wallamai adventure.
Arriving at the trailhead, we say goodbye to our car before struggling to load our heavy overnight bags onto our backs. Today's plan involves following the top of a ridge for a couple of hours, walking along a marked canyonist trail for several kilometres before a fork appears in the track. At this point, we'll take the significantly less used trail for as long as we can along the ridgetop. At some point, the track will peter off, and we will continue to follow the ridge before choosing a suitable point to head down into the gully that will lead us to our camp cave. That will be our home for the next 2 nights. Now, despite our intentions to spend both nights sheltered in a natural camp cave, meaning that there's no need to bring the additional weight of a tent, the combination of other overnight gear such as sleeping bags, stove, and fuel, as well as our technical canyoning equipment, has resulted in our packs being heavier than we would have liked. After scrambling up a short slope in the dark to access the camp cave, we begin to set up shop. Brad Channels is in a caveman to get the fire started, as I put my chef hat on and start preparing dinner. As viewers, you may be surprised to see me using a Trangia stove here, as opposed to the more modern and significantly lighter jet boil or other canister-based cooking system. Now, I'm quite a big fan of the Trangia stove, this likely being a result of having used it religiously throughout the adventure activities of my youth. Practically every camping trip I attended, the Trangia stove was provided to us teenagers, likely as it was practically indestructible and required barely any training or supervision to operate. For me now, grabbing the Trangia stove off the shelf at home definitely brings a sense of nostalgia, but I find the ability to adjust the amount of fuel that I'm bringing with me on a trip highly advantageous. We dig into some delicious chorizo pasta before sitting around the campfire and listening to the sounds of the wilderness, interrupted only by the crackling of the fire. If anyone knows a pastime more relaxing than sitting in front of a fire on a cold night in the bush, please let me know. Until then, you'll catch me out by the campfire every chance that I get. Sitting there, watching the flames dance around the logs before twirling up into the sky and disappearing, makes the minutes feel like seconds. And in that moment, I feel the ultimate sense of peace. The sun began to rise around 5:30 this morning, leaving us with an amazing view with vibrant hues of pink and red to start the morning. I was alerted to the cave's existence by a grid reference in an old canyoning guidebook. The cave is situated about halfway up the cliff line, separating the north branch of the Bungleboori Creek and the ridge that we walked in on yesterday. A small creek runs beside the cave and down to the Bungleboori, providing us with access to pristine drinking water within a minute walk. Now this creek has actually formed a canyon constriction further upstream, which we hope to explore a small section of tomorrow. The cave itself has a huge overhung wall, jutting out almost 10 meters from its base, meaning that we are well sheltered from rain and wind. As I stood in the cave eating my breakfast and looking out into the wilderness, I couldn't help but to think about how lucky I was to be able to have access to places like this. As a visitor to these pristine areas of the Australian bush, it is our duty to ensure that we respect the land and do all that we can to minimise our impact. The simple motto, "Take only photographs and leave only footprints," is succinct enough to be remembered by everyone, but still clearly demonstrates the intent of the message. We began our steep descent down to the creek, heading almost 100 metres down into the Bungleboori by relying on natural features such as rock pagodas and boulders to assist our descent. The sheer slope of the terrain that we are descending, in combination with the loose soil and dozens of trip hazards present, made our descent slow and cautious. A fall or slip in this environment could leave us with significant injuries. I found it hard to capture the rugged beauty and sheer size of the landscapes we were in with my camera. You truly felt dwarfed standing beneath 100-metre cliffs and boulders the size of houses. Standing on the bed of the creek, breathing in the cool mountain air, and knowing that we are the only two human beings in a 12-kilometre radius is truly a magical sensation. Ascending the gully on the opposite side of the creek required us to use a naturally fallen tree trunk as a bridge, which allowed us to overcome a small rocky overhang otherwise impassable. We continued to walk up the gully with the slope easing, but vegetation becoming thicker.
Oh yeah, I felt that rain.
Almost an hour in, we began to pass through a field of golden wattle flowers in stunning yellow bloom, reminding us that we've just left winter behind and that spring has well and truly begun. At this point, we were relieved knowing that the hard part of today's adventure was completed. We were now on the relatively flat ridge, which we would follow for a short period of time before picking a suitable point to drop down into the gully to our east. A supposedly easy 2-kilometre creek walk downstream should take us to our canyon constriction, ending at the intersection with the Bungleboori. From there, we'll wade upstream about an hour, returning to the pass that we descended earlier that day and back to our camp cave. Now, after almost 3 hours of scrambling through thick vegetation and climbing over numerous fallen trees and branches, we had made it approximately 2 kilometres downstream and were finally at a point where the canyon constriction had started. We felt a massive sense of relief reaching the canyon. However, we were wary that we would need to move quickly as it was already 3 o'clock.
Oi, Brad, what do you think of the canyon?
Crikey, that's a canyon.
We quickly rigged the first abseil about 10 metres in length. That would commit us to the darkest and narrowest canyon constriction that I have ever been in. The canyon was intensely beautiful, almost pitch black in sections with walls no wider than shoulder width apart. We completed 6 abseils in total, partially replacing the anchors at 2 due to corrosion and other damage. The water in the canyon was freezing cold, with several short swims and a duck under a log enough to invigorate us and make us forget any sense of exhaustion.
Past 6, I know it doesn't look like it because it's pitch black, but this is what it's like without daylight savings in Australia. Unfortunately, there won't be much content from the canyon, the last bit of the canyon, because we'll push for time to try and get here to the exit in daylight hours. As you can see, we failed. We did about an hour of walking up the Bungleboori Creek, some wading, some swimming, a lot of scrambling, camp, set up a fire. We got couscous, Moroccan couscous for dinner. And then we got some marshmallows for the fire. We'll see you up there.
Arriving back at camp was a great relief. Although the day was not long in terms of kilometres covered, we were both exhausted from having navigated through difficult terrain and thick vegetation without a track practically all day. We kicked off our wet shoes and quickly got the campfire going before digging into a delicious warm dinner. We briefly sat around the fire to take away the last bits of dampness before retreating to our warm sleeping bags and falling asleep to the crackling fire under a star-strewn sky. We awoke on day 3 to glorious birdsong and rays of light piercing through the tree canopy beside us. The sunlight lit up the sandstone cave and seemed to glow in stunning hues of gold. And as we sat there eating our breakfast, we truly felt a sense of peace and appreciation for this rugged and ancient landscape. After packing our bags, we decided to explore upstream of the creek that ran beside our camp cave, finding a stunning canyon constriction. A final refill of our water bottles and we were off. Back ascending the gully and returning on the way we'd entered 2 days prior. This time, however, we had the benefit of sunlight, which allowed us to locate a faint track that travelled along the creek line and up onto the spur. Now, we clearly missed this track in the low light and exhaustion 2 days prior.
So Brad and I have made it back to the car park. We've had pretty full on past couple of days. I think over the 3 days we've been out here, we've done almost 40 Ks and a fair bit of ascent, a fair bit of trackless navigation as well. So we're pretty relieved to be back here. Yeah, that's it.
And just like that, we were back on our way to civilization. It always surprises me how comfortable the little things that we take for granted can be. Plushy car seats, cold air conditioning, things that are easy to overlook in day-to-day life. But somehow, out in the bush I don't miss it. For me, the sense of adventure and connection to nature provides more comfort than a nice bed or warm shower ever will. The memories that we made over the past 3 days in the Australian bush won't be forgotten. Making the most of our youth now, so that when we grow old, we can tell our grandchildren some bloody cool stories. If you share these feelings, are interested in learning more about the Australian bush, or just want to enjoy more of this content from the comfort of your home, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on our next adventure.
Yay, Bradley! Woo! Go on.
Thanks for watching. We will see you on the next Wallamai adventure.